This is a video tutorial for the contemporary gift voucher. This is a 5x7 double-sided, and this is the version for Adobe InDesign. So both of your front and back will be on one file. Open, I have my Finder window with my logos, and I have a PNG and EPS version that was created in Adobe Illustrator. And I have a folder open with all of the images I want to use in my marketing. I keep all of these things on my Dropbox, so I always have an external storage for these files if I ever lose anything. Same goes with the templates. If you purchase any of the templates, I highly recommend that you save them on an external hard drive or on a cloud service like Dropbox, because something always will inevitably happen with your computer and you don't want to lose anything. So just keep that in mind as a backup, and we're going to get started here. So right now what I want to go over are the fonts. When you open up any of these templates and you don't have the fonts that come with the template, I wish I could include the fonts, but they are copyrighted. So if you want the exact fonts I use in this template, you'll need to purchase them from a font foundry. I use a company called myfonts.com. That is, let me type that out, myfonts.com. So this is the website you want to go to if you want to purchase these exact fonts. The fonts I'm using for this template are called Bodoni Sans, and you have different options for this particular font family. This particular font is Bodoni Sans Black. Here is Bodoni Sans Bold Italic, and down here is the Bodoni Sans Bold Regular. Those are the fonts that I use for this and the entire matching marketing piece. So there's everything for the contemporary portrait templates, and they'll be indicated by using these particular color schemes. And I try to keep everything cohesive, so you'll know exactly which marketing pieces go to which. So they all kind of have the same look throughout the entire piece, from the magazine all the way down to these gift vouchers. So the first thing I want to show you how to do is to replace the placeholder logo. This is not going to be a usable logo. Obviously, your business name is going to be not going to be your name portraits. So we're going to use the Move tool, and that'll be indicated by the black arrow. Actually, it's a black arrow with a white outline. I want you to select the logo and delete it. Now we're going to create our own graphic frame, and the graphic frames are necessary in order to add content to your marketing piece. So by selecting that graphic frame, I want you to move your mouse over to the corner of the safe area and click and drag to create a box. It could be any size. Just want to give a basic size right here so that we can put our logo in. There are a couple ways you can do this. You can, with the Finder window opened up, and click and drag your logo into that box, and it will place it in there for you. And I'm going to hit Command-Z to undo that. Another way is, when you have this box selected, you have to go to File, to Place, or Command-D as your keyboard shortcut. Then I want you to go to the folder that has your logos, or the versions of your logos. And I'm going to select the EPS version of my logo. A PNG will also work, but it has to be a transparent PNG. So I'm going to click on my logo and then click Open. And it's going to place that logo within that graphic frame. We can also reduce the size of this graphic frame by using the the Move tool. And using the Shift key, we bring that box in to make it smaller. And now it's going to cut off part of your logo, but that's okay. If we go to Object, to Fitting, to Fill Frame Proportionally, it'll resize your logo within that graphic frame. You go Command-Z, and another way you could do it is by clicking on the Scale tool. If you double click that, it will open up this window and say we want to scale it by 50%. So you type in 50 on the X and the Y, and then click OK. and it'll reduce the size of your logo that way as well. I think 75% would be better, so I'm going to double click that again. I'm going to click 75 on my keyboard, and if you hit tab, it automatically will change the scale of the Y coordinate as well. Then click OK, and it's going to reduce the size of your logo. All right. Next, we're going to add a photograph. This is the background of your gift voucher. This particular design uses a picture across the entire page. This area right here, let me zoom in, is going to be the trim area. So anything outside of this line right here, this black line, is going to get cut off when you go to printing. This is what's called a bleed area. If you want your image to go all the way to the edge of a paper, you need to create a graphic frame that goes all the way to this white line. And that way, anything that gets trimmed off will then appear as if it goes all the way to the edge of the page. This purple line that's all around the text is what's called a safe area. When you go to print, sometimes there's a little bit of shifting involved of the paper when it's printing. And if you have text that goes all the way to the edge of this page line, it could get cut off. You don't want to go anything smaller than 1/4 of an inch, so that would be if there was a line right here between this safe area and this trim line. I like to go about 1/2 inch with this particular design because it I think it frames the text a lot nicer. So if anybody's wondering what this is in InDesign, this is what it's going to look like. In the Photoshop version, I actually create a layer that has these lines in it, and they're indicated on there, and you'll want to turn that layer off when you go to printing. But InDesign, it's created in the program for you, so when you go to print, these things disappear automatically. It's just for the program and for the preview while you're creating that design within the program. Okay, now I'm going to go over to my Finder window, and I have my folder open with photographs that I'm going to use from my portfolio in all of my marketing. Now this image is going to be horizontal for this particular piece, so I need a horizontal image. And I think I want to promote my family portrait sessions. So I'm going to click on a picture of a beautiful family. This is actually my sister, her husband, and their daughter, and his parents. I'm going to click and drag this onto the document. What I did is I moved the image right into the graphic frame where the background is, and it's going to automatically fill this frame with the image, just like it did with our logo. And again, this is not quite proportional to the 5x7 document, so I need to fit this within the proportions of my graphic frame. So with the graphic frame selected, I'm going to go to Object, Fitting, to fill frame proportionally. And it's going to fill all the space within that graphic frame with my image. And you'll notice now that my logo is placed here, it's not going to quite work. So we're going to move that around shortly after we fix our text. Now you'll notice that my logo is red and gold. I like to keep my marking pieces using the same colors as my logo. Now the template has more of this kind of a rose gold look, but we can change that. So we're going to open up our swatch panel, and it looks really similar to the one that's in Photoshop. Just go to Window, to Color, and then click on Swatches. And that's going to open up our swatch palette. And it comes with oops, I'm going to deselect. I want to turn that off, because if you have anything selected, it's going to change the color of that entire graphic frame. Excuse me, allergies today. When you open up, when you open up your swatch panels, it's going to come with these default colors. I like to get rid of them. They're kind of a distraction, so I'll select those colors and delete those swatches. And since nothing was using any of those colors, it's not going to turn anything black like that warning that just came up. And I'm going to deselect all the other colors that are in here that I don't need. And I'm just clicking on this little graphic on my swatch panel. It looks like 4 little lines, and that opens up another dialog box. And then I'm going to hit delete swatches. And it shows a warning. If you selected anything that, if you're going to delete these colors, anything that's in that color is going to change to black throughout the entire document. But nothing I'm selecting is actually in that color, so I'm going to click OK. All right. So now I have Pantone 178 and Pantone 10365. When I imported the EPS logo from, or not imported, but when I dragged and clicked it over into here, InDesign and InDesign and Illustrator are made by the same company. So when they created the program, anything that you created in InDesign as an EPS file automatically gets imported into here when you copy and paste from Illustrator. And so that's why my colors had showed up. If your colors do not show up, there's an easy way to add them. Go over to your swatch panels and click on that little line again. We're going to add a new color swatch. And if you happen to know the name of the Pantone color used on your logo, great. This is where you can put it in. So I'm going to click on where it says color mode. I'm going to click on that drop down menu. And I'm going to go to Pantone Solid Uncoated. And here you can type in the name of the Pantone color. Mine is a Pantone 187, so if I click on 187, it shows up in here. Oh, it looks a little different. Oh, because I used coated. The C right here indicates whether or not it's coated or uncoated. So I am in the wrong swatch book. So I'm going to go back to Pantone Solid Coated. Then I'm going to type in 187, and there is my swatch color right there. If it had a U at the end of it, that would mean uncoated. And if I type in Pantone 10365, oh, that's in the metallics. So let's see, premium metallics coated, this has a C at the end of it. I'm going to type in 10365, and there is my Pantone swatch. So go into, if you have a logo that was created in Adobe InDesign, open up InDesign and click on the swatch panels, and that'll show you the name of your Pantone color. If you do not know the name of the Pantone colors because maybe your logo is created in Photoshop, then you need to open up Photoshop, open up the file that has your logo, and in Photoshop, let me hit cancel on this. There is an eyedropper tool just like it has in InDesign. You'll need to use an eyedropper tool to click on areas of your logo that have a different color. When you click on that, it'll show you, it'll indicate in the foreground and background the colors of that you're selecting with the eyedropper tool. When you click on the foreground color, you double click on it in Photoshop. In this type of dialog box, the color pick will come up too. It looks just like this. And it'll show you the RGB, the CMYK, RGB and the CMYK, and then the web color number for that color. Copy these numbers down, the CMYK, and go back into InDesign. And then you click on the same thing that we did before, the options on the swatch panel, and then click New Color Swatch. And that's where you're going to add in your colors. The color mode will then need to be changed to, where is it there? CMYK. And then you input the colors, all the 4 colors of cyan, magenta, yellow, and black that you recorded from Photoshop into here. When you've done that, click Add, and it will add your new color to this swatch panel, and then you can use it throughout your entire document. So once you have your colors added, go to your Tools panel and click on the Type tool. It's the same, it looks very similar to the one you see in Photoshop. This is one of the reasons why I love telling people about InDesign. One, because it makes it easier that all of your files are in one document, but if you're used to using Photoshop, going to InDesign to do your marketing is really quite seamless because the interface is so similar. The tools are similar. The way that you use them is so similar. So the transition is not that hard, and the learning curve is a lot lower for this. So with the Type tool, I want you to select the text that we want to change color to. And you can change it to the colors that you use in your logo. So let's try the red because I think that's going to really pop against this black and white image. And on the lower part, using the Type tool, I'm going to select this text. They're on 2 different text boxes. So if I click on this text using the move tool, you'll see the blue bounding box around this text and another one around this. Oh, it's just out of the safe area. So that you'll have to select them separately. So I'm going to select this text, and because it's a little bit smaller, I think I'm going to select it as paper white and see how that looks. And I'm just going to move this over into the screen so I can see it better. And then what I'm going to do is turn off the guides so I can see what it looks like without guides. So I'm going to go to View, to Overprint Preview. Try that again. Okay. I'm going to click W on my keyboard shortcut. And then that is going to show me what it looks like when the page is trimmed and without my guide marks on there. And on Overprint Preview, if I have that selected, it'll show me a little bit more crisper, clean version of my photo. So I think that's going to be a little easier to read there. Maybe try gold and see how that looks. No, a little bit harder to read. Let's try red. Yeah, I think the white's probably my best option here. Also picking a photo that maybe isn't quite as busy as the one that I have here. But also once things get printed, the background image always ends up being a little bit darker than what you see on screen. So sometimes some of those little errors kind of fix themselves in the printing process. Now let's go and change this logo. I can always, if this photo that I'm using doesn't quite work with the logo placement, I can always go back to the delete it and put it into the back of my card instead. So maybe I'll choose an image and put the logo here instead. That is a little easier to see. So I'm going to go into my images here and select one that is vertical that I could possibly use here. Here we go. I'm not going to use the same family in all of this entire document, but you can if you have multiple pictures of that one family. So I'm going to do the same thing I did with adding a picture. I'm going to click and drag it over. And I'm going to use my direct selection tool this time so that I can maneuver this image within the graphic frame so that it comes up a little bit higher. So when I click on that, you'll see a blue bounding box come outside the graphic frame. That just shows that there's more of this image to it than it was before. So I'm going to click it and move it up. And if that doesn't quite do it, I'm going to select the graphic frame again using my Move tool, go to Object, to Fitting, to Fill Frame Proportionally. And I think that's just a better look for that image. And I'm going to go over to, scroll up to my page 1, click on my logo, and I'm going to cut it out, Edit, to Cut, and I'm going to scroll down to page 2, or to the back side, and go to Edit to Paste. And now I'm going to move my logo onto another photo. So there it's a little bit easier to see that logo, and it's not cutting off anybody's head. It's just a nicer placement for it. Going back to the back side, using the Type tool, I'm going to select, I'm going to close this swatch panel. I'm going to move it out of the way here. Using that Type tool, I'm going to select my text. I'm going to click on my swatch panel again and change that to red. And I'm going to select this text as well and change that to red. Then this text I'm going to change to gold. And this text to red. And the expiration date I'm going to change to red as well. If you know what expiration date, oops, sorry, it didn't change. If you know the expiration date, you can actually change it with the Type tool in this document. We can create our own, let me deselect out of that. With the Type tool, and I'm going to zoom in here so you can see this better. I'm going to create a little text box here. I'm going to put in a number. Let's say it'll be December, so I'll put in 12. I'm going to move that text box over here. I'm going to make the text box just a little bit smaller so it's not taking up so much room. Okay. Using my arrows, I'm just kind of eye the placement of this so it's centered within this line. And then I'm going to click on my Option key on my keyboard, with the Move tool selected on our Tools panel, and I'm going to make a copy. Oops. I'm going to make a copy of that text box and move it over here to the center. And I'll say, we'll change it to the 31st. So using that type tool, selecting that text, I'm going to change it to 31st. And we're going to copy that text box again. So I'm holding down the Option key on my keyboard and moving it over here. And I know that the year is going to be a little longer, so I'm going to make that text box just a little bit wider. Using my type tool, select this again. I'm going to put 2020. And I need to make it bigger again because it disappeared because it wasn't big enough for the text that I put in there. And again, with my Move tool, I'm just going to make sure it's centered in that line for the expiration date. So this is one way of manually putting in an expiration date. If you know that the entire batch that you are printing, if you get this printed through GotPrint, which is who I recommend, or Miller's Lab, which you can get a smaller run a little faster. If you're going to print like 25, 50, 100, and you know you're going to give them all out, and you want at a certain event, and you want a specific expiration date, that's one way to put it in. If you prefer not to, and you're going to give them out individually, you can handwrite this in. So if you keep this blank, that's fine, and then have them printed, and then you can handwrite in what you want the expiration date is depending on when you give it out. So the option is entirely up to you. So now let's add the rest of our images to this document. I'm going back to the Finder that has my images in here, and I see if I can find some more family pictures. There we go. I'm going to click and drag those over here. The other way that you can add images is going to, by clicking on the graphic frame with your Move tool, go to File, to Place, and I'm going to go to the Dropbox folder that has my images in it. And I have a folder that is, let's see, there we go. And I'm going to look for all of my pictures here. What do I want to add? Let's see. Another family photo. What do I want to use? So I used that, and that. Looks like I may not have enough, but we'll just double this up right here. Here we go. Let's use this picture. I double click that, and it's going to place my image within that graphic frame. And again, we need to select that graphic frame, go to Object, Fitting, Fill Frame Proportionally. And if you have done all the changes that you want, just look it over and make sure that the text is what the way you want. It's exactly what you want to say. You, of course, can change the text to say something different. Use the Type tool to retype that text. So if you want to say for a complimentary portrait session, or you want to say specifically a complimentary family session, family portrait session, you can add that text in there. If you want to change the amount of credit that they get, you can change it to 300. You can change it to 50. It's entirely up to you. If you're finding that that text is still too difficult to read, you can add what's called a transparency behind it. Now I'm going to go back to viewing this with my guides. I'm going to click W on my keyboard to bring those guides back. I'm going to click on the rectangle tool on our tools panel, and I'm going to click and drag it across this text. I want to use maybe about a quarter. I'm going to eye it there for a second, but then I'm going to go back and change that. And then I'm going to click on my swatch panel, and I want to turn off the black outline because this just does not look good. Does not work with this design. And I'm going to click the foreground and change that to paper white. Then I'm going to go into my effects panel. If it's not already opened by default on Adobe InDesign, go to Window, to Effects, and that will open up the open up the panel. I already have it open. I'm going to click on that. The opacity right now is at 100%. Let's just drop it down to 50. Okay, and then clicking on having this rectangle selected with our transparency and holding down the Shift key, I'm going to select our background image. By doing so, what I'm going to do is send all of that stuff to the back so that the text is in the foreground. So I'm going to go to Object, Arrange, Send to Back. And now our text is above our transparency layer. Let me deselect that. And I'm just going to select my transparency box because I want it to come above the text right here. I'm just going to iron this right now. And then I can change this color. If that's the white's still not working, I'm going to go into my swatches and change it to black and see if that looks a little bit better. What I'm trying to do is darken the background enough so that I can see my text clearly over this picture, because this picture is a little bit more busy. It's got more grays, whites, and blacks in it, so a lot of different color text doesn't quite work. Also, this text is, in some instances, a little harder to read, so we can change the font. When I use these kind of more stylized looking fonts, I like to throw in a very plain font with it. For instance, using Open Sans. Open Sans is a free font which you can find on Google. You just Google Open Sans and you can download the entire font family for free. So I'm going to type in Open Sans in our type tool. On the character panel, you can do the same thing. Just type in the name of the font that you want. I'm using Open Sans. I'm going to click Enter. And it automatically uses the Open Sans fonts that matched whatever font you were using before. I am using, let's see, it's probably regular. Okay, so it's changing everything to that. I'm going to make the text a little bit smaller because once I change that font, some of them are a little bit bigger and some are a little bit smaller. I'm going to change that down to 11 points to make it a tiny bit smaller and fit within my safe area. And I want to draw attention to the plus a $50 credit. So I'm going to highlight just that text. And I'm going to choose to use the bold font of Adobe Open Sans. And then you want to change the studio name because this is just a default text that I put in here, and you want to add in your studio, or you can delete it. But let's put in Red Crane Portia, since that's the name of my studio. And let's see, change anything else? Nope, that's perfect. Okay, so now that we made those adjustments, I'm going to collapse that dialog box there, or that panel, and then just take another look-see. If you made some changes and you want to double check your text to make sure everything's printed or everything is spelled correctly, we can go over with that. Oh, here's another change. Let's go into the back side and double check that we need to change the name of the studio. So type in your studio name here. Okay, and looking it over really quick. I'm going to zoom out, so I'm hitting Command 0 as a keyboard shortcut on my computer, or sorry, on my keyboard. If you want to zoom out, you can go to Window, and I think the zoom is underneath there. Oh no, sorry, it's View. So you can zoom in and zoom out, and if you notice, the keyboard shortcut is zooming out as Command equals or Command minus. Sorry, zooming in Command equal, and zooming out Command minus. I think Command plus also works too. Plus the plus minus symbol on your keyboard. So I can zoom in and I can zoom out. Just a quick keyboard shortcut. If you're on a PC, I think it's Command. I'm sorry, Option. But don't quote me on that. I can't. Or maybe it's Control and then the keyboard. I can't remember, but it's been a while since I've used a PC. But on a Mac, it's Command minus and Command equals. All right, so double checking our text, we're going to go to Edit, to Spelling, to check spelling. And another dialog box is going to pop up, and it's going to show where we've made some mistakes in our text. So once you selected the change to, just click on the suggested correction and click Change. Oh, here we go. We need to add in our website and our contact information. So I'm going to click Done for now. So change your website name. Oops. Not looking what I'm typing. And then change your phone number. Now, just another look-see to make sure that everything is correct. What is your booking fee regularly? Change that too. Make sure you're double checking everything. I just put in some basic text so that you can have something to start with. So make sure that everything is correct, what your booking fee is, depending on the type of session. The booking fee usually includes like hair and makeup, or if it's just like a holding fee so that people make sure that they keep that date. And some people use that booking fee to go towards the purchase of the portrait session. So it just depends on how you want to handle that and how you run your business. Make sure the gift voucher, where it says gift voucher, is not used for personal branding sessions. Those are just little things that you may not want to add. So if you don't want that and it's okay to use it for any type of session, just go ahead and select that text and delete it. Again, double checking everything. I think I want to change this text color to gold and get it look a little bit better. Okay. So again, just look over, make sure there are any other changes you want to make. And once that is all done and you've made all of your customizations, let's save a copy of your the changes so that you always have an original of the template, and then you have the versions of that you've customized for different marketing pieces. So let's go to File to Save As. And I'm going to save this to my desktop for now. I'm going to call this Family Gift Voucher. And we're going to keep the format in Adobe InDesign and click Save. All right. Once that is done, we're going to need to prep this for printing. Now, all you can do, you can save this export this as a JPEG or as a PDF, depending on the type of printer you're using. So make sure that if you're using Miller's Lab or if you're using Gotprint, who's the other printer that I suggest and recommend, just double check with them on how best to print and export your files so that you are adhering to their specifications for printing. I like PDFs. They're always very easy to upload. It's pretty universal among all printers. I also want to make sure that if they don't have the fonts or if there's something wrong with the way that they accept PDFs, make sure that you outline the fonts. And what that does is turns the actual font into an object, and then you won't be able to edit again. But since we're saving as a PDF, we can either save a copy with the outlined fonts or hit Command-Z and make sure that we don't save that final version as outlined fonts. So if you ever need to go back and change it, you can. So we're going to go to Type to create outlines. Oops, sorry, my computer's a little slow today. Let's let that run for a second. Okay, so I'm going to hit Create an Outline. So now you'll see that there's bounding boxes around all the text here. And anything that's grouped together like this is going to be grouped together in outlines. And if I click on my Type tool, I'm not able to select any of this text and make any changes. If I hit Command-Z, I can get to go back to regular font text boxes. And I'm going to hit Shift-Z to go back to the outline. And then we're going to go to page 2, so scroll down. And you hit Command-A on your keyboard to select everything. And then go to Type, Create Outlines. Or you can also hit Command-Shift-O, which will also do that. So I'm going to hit Command-Z. So keyboard shortcut, Command-A selects everything. It's not going to make any changes to your graphic frames, so you don't have to worry about this when you select all. And then hit Command-Shift-O on your keyboard, and that will convert all the text to outlines. Once we've done that, let's go to File, to Export. And you can save the format as a JPEG. And what's going to do is create two JPEG files with the name, oops, I misspelled Family Gift Voucher, and one will say Family Gift Voucher 1, Family Gift Voucher 2, indicating that it has two files that created from your document. So if you save it as a JPEG, click Save, and you want to have all of your pages selected, or you can select a range. If you just want to export one page at a time, you can click in Range and click in Page 1, and then you have to go back and export again and hit Page 2. If you want to do it all at once, You can just delete that, click all, and because these are single pages, just keep it on page. If we were using magazines and we wanted to export as a PDF for emailing, you can save it as spreads. If you're going to print a magazine, you have to export it as pages because it's going to take each side of that page and then upload it to your printer. We want maximum quality. We want the resolution to be minimum 300, but again, check with your printer because you may have to change it to 350. Your color space could be RGB or CMYK. Most printers, like Got Print, who just do print materials constantly, prefer CMYK. Places like that print for photographers, like Miller's Lab, sometimes they want RGB. But again, that I would just double check depending on the option, the material that you're printing. Make sure that you check with them if it's CMYK or RGB that they accept. I just go CMYK across the board and I haven't had any problems. You may need to use document bleeds depending on the printer. Actually needed to use a document bleeds on all of them because this is where the it gets trimmed off. So you want that extra 1/4 of an inch or 3/4 of an inch to trim off when you go to print. And we're going to click on export. And that's going to export both pages of our document and save them to our desktop. And it's going to be page 1 and page 2 of the family portrait or family gift voucher. So I'm going to click on my Finder so I can double check. I'm going to click on the new Finder window and click on my desktop, and you can see them right there. So you have family gift voucher. This will be 1, so it'll be front, and family gift voucher 2. So when you go to upload them, make sure that you're uploading the right side. You'll usually see a preview when you're uploading to a printer. You'll see a preview of the image that you're uploading. Now we're going to go back in and we're going to export this as a PDF. So File to Export, and then we're going to change the format to PDF Print in parentheses. And when we do that, it's going to take all the pages of our file on our document into one PDF document, which is great when you're doing magazines because you know how those magazines can be like up to 24 to 32 pages, and you want to export them all at once into one PDF document. Whereas in Photoshop, you have to do one page at a time. So I'm going to change the file name there to the correct spelling. Adobe PDF Print, click Save, and another dialog box is going to come up, and it's going to ask us for a few other options. Yes, I want all the pages exported. Yes, I want to have it in pages because it's one page at a time. Marks and bleeds. You may need crop marks for this depending on the printer. I think Miller's doesn't need them. And Got Print, there's some, I don't think it needs it either, but there are other printers who specifically want crop marks. So you can select that on or off depending on what you want. You definitely need your bleeds, so make sure that the bleeds in the documents are selected, 0.125 inches all the way around, on top, bottom, left, and right. And your output, if you used any of the Pantone colors, we're going to need to switch those to CMYK. So click on Output, click on Ink Manager, and make sure all spots go to Process. That makes anything that's a Pantone color to CMYK mix. Then we're going to click OK. Everything else is fine. Anything advanced is not necessary on this particular document. Your compatibility, I like to make sure it's at Acrobat 8 and 9 because it's more universal, it's more up to date. It alleviates any problems when you send things to a printer. We're going to click on Export, and it's going to run for a second. You can see this at the bottom. It's checking for errors. If you have a green button, it says no errors, you're good to go. If there's anything red, then you might want to double check that there isn't anything wrong with your document. And again, we're going to go back into the Finder and to our desktop. It's going to automatically open in Adobe Acrobat when it's done exporting, and it will show up on your desktop right here as your PDF. And you can see that it has both pages in that PDF. So you got page 1 and page 2 are both in that PDF. When you have Adobe Acrobat on your computer, I have Adobe InDesign set to automatically open up in Adobe Acrobat once it's done printing. And it looks like I may have not set my resolution for my images when I export it, so I'm going to go back and double check that. So I'm going to hit Command Q to close out of Acrobat. Okay, let's take a second to do that. We're going to go back into Adobe InDesign, and I'm going to go back to the export again to make sure that when I exported, my images were set to 300 dpi. A lot of the times when I'm making things for to upload to Facebook, I can lower the resolution so the file size is smaller and the image isn't come out really, really huge. So let's go to File to Export again. And we're going to select the PDF print, yes. Oops, I'm going to cancel. File to Export, and I'm going to change the name so you can save over the file that we originally set. Yep, I'm going to replace it so I can change and write over the file that I just exported. We're going to go to Advanced, compression, here it is. Okay, so what I did is the last time I used InDesign, it was set to 96 dpi for any of the images. Let's set that to 350 because that's a higher resolution. That's good for printing. If you're using things on the web and you want to reduce the file size, you would reduce it to 76 or 72 dpi. Okay. So once all that's set, make sure the compatibility is still at 8.9. Everything else should be the same as the last export, so all pages, but page size. And then marks and bleeds, make sure you have at least your bleed setting there, and crop marks if needed for the printer. And click Export again. So it's going to run the export of our files. It's going to then open up again in Adobe Acrobat. And as soon as that's done, see it's launching Acrobat, and it's going to show us, there we go, much sharper image on there. Usually I can tell if I've screwed that up and I didn't reset my resolution because the image will come out a little grainier. Here you can see that it's a lot sharper. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit, hitting Command- on my keyboard, and I'm going to look at the second page, and everything's there. So once you're done with all of that, with your export, then you can go into the printer. Now, depending on Miller's Lab or Got Print, the upload will be a little bit different, and so will the interface. I'm going to create another video tutorial to show you what that looks like and help you with that upload. And if you have any questions about the template that we just went over, please leave comments in the comment section on YouTube. You can also go to our Facebook page at Designfully Templates and post a question there. All right. Have fun making your marketing templates.